Very good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Samrat Kumar. I am the Euraxis India country representative with a bad throat today. I really apologize for that. Yeah, I'm very happy that so many of you have showed up. We have attendees not only from India, but also from Europe and other parts of the world. That makes us very proud. This is our first webinar of this year, how to write a successful PhD proposal and how to apply for fully funded PhD positions in Europe. So before I start with the actual webinar, I would like to present you a few information with regards to today's webinar, and also, of course, introduce our main speaker to you. So let me just share my screen and open my PowerPoint presentation to you. Yeah, and at the same time, I'll just close my video, and now I hope that my presentation is visible to you. Oh, that's I'm sorry, it was this one. Yeah, okay. Alida, could you just tell me if the presentation is visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so this webinar is about how to write a successful PhD proposal, and here we have two components. The first component of the webinar will be an overview about PhD opportunities in Europe, especially under the EU program known as the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions. And then we go to the second part of the webinar, is how to apply for a PhD, how to write a successful PhD proposal, a successful thesis. And here we have Dr. Jacob Wickham, who will be joining us, and he will be the main trainer of today's webinar. So before we go straight into action, I would like to just give you a few informations regarding the logistics of this webinar. So you will see that there is a chat or a question option, a box in your panel, and you can post your questions there. And we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the webinar where we will try to answer all your questions. Due to time constraints, we might not be able to answer all the questions. So if you feel your question has not been answered, then please also you can send us your questions after the event, and we will try our best to answer them. In case you're facing any technical issues, I request you to first try to log out, log in. It's possible to do multiple logouts, logins, so that could solve most of the issues, I would say. And don't worry, we will send you the presentations and also the link of the recording of this webinar in a follow-up email. We also will ask you for your kind feedback at the end of the webinar. There will be a very short survey we would like you to fill out. It will take maximum 2 minutes just to get a feedback from your side as well. And as we had announced and promised in the webinar post, you will also all receive a certificate who are attending today on this webinar. Okay, so that's just about the kind of logistics of this webinar. Let's now jump straight into the action. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, what we want to present to you today is a very interesting research program by the European Union known as the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions. And this is actually the EU's flagship mobility research program, where there are plenty of funding opportunities for Indian researchers, individual researchers, but also institutional. Since our focus is today on the PhD opportunities, we will only concentrate on the action program, which is providing PhD opportunities. Let me go to the next slide. So here, maybe some of you already have seen the so-called career ladder, and every one of you can see where you would be right now. I suppose the majority of our attendees are at the postgraduate doctoral level. And here you see on top of the ladder, you see the different EU programs which are suitable for researchers at different career levels or career steps. I think most of you have heard about Erasmus+. This is for mobility programs for undergraduates, for master students. And then when you move to the doctoral postdoc level, the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions come in place. And once you step further the ladder and you are at the stage of a junior professor or associate professor, you would be interested in looking at the European Research Council grants. This is something which is not relevant at the moment because we are focusing on PhD, but you see the EU has quite a few programs ready for researchers at all different stages and from all different careers and disciplines and from all over the world. Now, what is the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions? The short term for it is the MSCA. This is giving mobility, training, and career development to researchers from all over the world through excellent doctoral, postdoctoral fellowships and collaborative projects. The MSCA has it as its aim to stimulate international, intersectoral, and interdisciplinary cooperation. And another very important feature of the MSCA is that the participation of the non-academic sector, especially the industry and SMEs, is very much wanted, and it's very much an integral part of this program. So it means if you're planning to do a doctorate studies under the MSCA, you for 99.9% will have to also work and be seconded to non-academic institutions. I will talk about this in a bit. Another important key feature is that it's for researchers at every stage of their career. Remember the ladder we showed to you. And it's a bottom-up approach. And it's giving kind of 100% of financing. So it means this position, this PhD position, would be 100% funded by the EU. So that's a great thing. It's like having a real job under the EU program when you apply. Now, let's look at the relationship between India and the MSCA in the last 7 years has been, I would say, remarkably. In the last 7 years, thousands of Indian researchers have been funded through the MSCA programs, PhDs and postdoc positions, and more than 30% of them have been women. Now, mostly Indian researchers who have been funded under the MSCA conducted their research in, let's say, these following countries: the UK, Germany, France, Italy, the Netherlands. But this is only 5 countries out of 42 countries where you could potentially apply for a PhD position. So the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Action programs are covering the entire European continent and beyond. So there you will see, if you go more in detail, you will see that there is a list of 42 countries. And in most of these countries, the MSc programs are taking place. Now, Indians are the second most active non-EU nationals, means nationals outside of the European Union who are participating in the MSCA. So the Indian students, Indian researchers have a very good track record of applying and getting funded by the MSCA. So that's something which should be encouraging you as well today. What are the research fields of Indian MSCA fellows in the last years? It has been, of course, engineering, the ICT, life science, chemistry, physics, environment, and geoscience, but also social sciences, humanities have been part of this. Students from this field have also been applying and being funded, and economy and mathematics as well. Now let's have a look at the kind of which fields are the most Indians have been the most successful. Like here you see engineering and ICT. This is like with 32%. That's the top area where Indian students have received funding under the MSCA. Then followed by life science, chemistry, physics, but as I said, also social science, humanities. There's a certain percentage of also successful candidates from these fields. Now, this MSCA PhD programs have been known as innovative training networks. So these are doctoral training programs, but the word training shouldn't be misleading. This is like really a full-fledged PhD program conducted by the host university, funded by the EU MSCA program, and they're 3 to 4 years and fully funded with a full salary as well. There are up to now, there have been 3 categories of this training networks, of these PhD programs. One was the European Training Network, the European Industrial Doctorate, which already implies, the word industrial implies that it has to do to work with the non-academic sector, and the European Joint Doctorate. That means that our projects which have a consortium of different universities and who offer also dual degrees. Now, in 2020, around 150 projects have been funded under the MSCA, and it means it's now around thousands of PhD positions are currently available across Europe for international researchers and from India to apply for these PhD positions. And I will show you also how you can access those information, how you can apply to those PhD positions currently. Now, how do you apply? Basically, if you apply for MSc PhD position, it's very much you're applying for a real job. Let me say that it's one of the most generous PhD programs in Europe. The salaries are even higher than in most of the European countries which have ordinary PhDs. With the salary, the MSCA, the EU also offers you a living, family, and mobility allowance. Now, the projects, like the 150 projects which have been funded, they already been set up by the beneficiaries and consortia. And now the consortia, the organizations and their project are looking for suitable candidates in which fit to the project. And the good news is all fields of science are here funded and possible. You can apply for STEM, SSH, and economy as well. Deadlines are not fixed. They have already now, the calls are open. It's traditionally, it's up to May that the PhD positions are announced. And then again, at the end of the year, the new round of the 2021 PhD Train Network projects will be published, and then PhD positions will be announced under that. Now, to just give you an example of current open PhD calls in Europe, you see that, for instance, under the MSCA, we have right now, these are just 4 out of hundreds which are right now available. I just selected 4 of them. In biological science, under the project P for Fit, Perspectives for Future Innovation in Tendon Repair. And here the PhD positions are distributed among different institutions based in Austria, Finland, and the UK. The deadline will be March 31st. Another 15 PhD positions are available under the project Deep Ice core-related climate science. Again, the host institutions are spread across Italy, Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. And the deadlines are right now open and going on. Another project is called Bio to Brain, and here there are 13 PhD positions available in the treatment of neurological diseases. Host institutions are placed in the Czech Republic, Greece, Germany. Deadline would be April 6th. But these are now EU programs, but also the EU member states also have their international PhD programs and opportunities. So I just selected one in Germany in imaging cellular processes and disease at the IMPRS in Germany, which is having an offer of 16 PhD positions, and the deadline would be April. I will show you where you can find those open PhD positions, and also maybe PhD positions which are relevant to your background. And this is basically what I wanted to say, that all this information you can find on the EURAXESS portal, on the EURAXESS website. This is the institution I'm representing. We have 4 main pillars. We have a job and funding database, which is, I would say, the largest database for researchers with thousands of offers daily. We have a search engine where you can clearly type in the discipline, the science you are working at, the field, and also what kind of a position you're looking at. Are you looking for a PhD? Are you looking for a postdoc? Are you looking for assistant professorship? Everything you can type in our search engine. I'll also show you in a bit how you can operate our website portal. We have over 600 service centers across 42 European countries who give support to incoming researchers. So if you're planning to go to the Czech Republic, to Greece, Germany, France, we have dedicated officers in those countries who will help you also with your move to Europe, and also help you with all kinds of questions related to moving to a European country, accommodation, housing, bringing your family along, kindergarten, social insurances, taxes. So our dedicated colleagues will help you, give you personalized assistance and help you to make your move and your stay very relishable and without any larger complications. We also have a partnering database for researchers and entrepreneurs who are looking for host institutions or looking for partner institutions. That is also possible to search under the partnering base. And we have an international global arm, which is the EURAXESS Worldwide. And here we have offices and officers in the different countries and continents. We have in ASEAN, Australia, New Zealand, China, India, which is me, Japan, the Latin American Caribbeans, North America, and South Korea. And we're further planning to open an office in South Africa next year. So what does the EURAXESS Worldwide Network offer to you? We have tailored information on jobs, research scholars, and funding. So especially for Indian researchers, if you go to the EURAXESS India website, you will find a lot of information regarding research career and jobs and funding. We provide you with email alerts about events, breaking news on EU policy, like when the next round of important calls is opening, also what kind of funding is available right now. That all we will provide you through the EURAXESS Worldwide Network. We also help you to connect with fellow research professionals. So not only in India, but we have a global network of researchers, so we can also help you to connect with them. Yeah, as I said, a global pool of highly qualified talent, which you can also tap into, and support. You get support from dedicated country representatives and support officers like here in India. Just to show you some figures, annually we publish over 60,000 job vacancies in Europe. So job vacancies also include PhD and postdoc because they're considered in most European countries as a proper job with a proper salary and allowances. Around 17,000 research organizations, universities are at the connected to EURAXESS, who constantly publish job opportunities, funding opportunities on the portal. 1 lakh users with EURAXESS, so that makes EURAXESS the largest research database network in the world. So why not join that and become part of this great community? Funding opportunities are also available for entrepreneurs, which are published on the EURAXESS portal. And as I always repeat, all areas of sciences are covered there, social sciences and humanities included. So this is our website. And if you go on the jobs and funding, if you click here, if you see my mouse moving, if you click here, you will immediately be directed to the job and funding portal and can start immediately searching for a job. If you like, I can just quickly show you the EURAXESS. Yeah, if you go here, you go EURAXESS India. And here you see the our website, and here you have the opportunity to sign up and become a member for free instantly, and then get all this information on a regular basis from us. Let's go to the job and funding, just to give you a good example. So here you can see search for jobs and post your offer. I want to search for a job offer now. I don't want to post, I want to search. And let's say I take physics as my research field, and I want to know about. Now here you see 2,396 publications are available here, and then you can refine it even more. You can even do your research profile. Okay, I'm a first stage researcher, which I think most of us are here in this webinar. You can choose the country, but you can also choose the which European research program. Let's just choose the profile and see how much are left in physics now. 1,771. Okay, I want a fully funded PhD program under the MSCA. Let's search there and see in physics what offers are there. 120 offers are there under the MSCA in the field of physics. So you see short-term studentship opportunities in physics, early-stage research opportunities at the Italian National Institute of Nuclear Physics. In dark sectors, dark matters, there are PhD positions available at the University of Durham in the UK. So you see there are plenty of opportunities to and possibilities to search in the job and funding database. We also have a career and development section where we give you like free material on how to develop your career. This webinar today is also part of our career development agenda. And here you can again see, are you a researcher looking for optimize your career? You just go here, visit the researchers page, and here you see a lot of information and download PDFs you can download, and videos and YouTube tutorials on how to develop your international career. Information and assistance. If you go here, you see living in Europe, working in Europe, leaving Europe. There are a lot of under subtitles. You can have a look here if you're interested in accommodation, health insurance. You get all the informations, and we have our national portals as well. If you go our national portals, you see that here, all in these countries, we have your access service centers. And let's say you're interested in going to Ireland, or let's say Norway. You want to go to Norway, then you can go directly to the Norway your Access Norway page and find all the relevant information there for you. Okay, let's just conclude the presentation. So go on the Your Access India website, sign up and become a member for free. You can register today. You can also email us if you have any questions. And of course, we would be very happy if you would follow us on and like us on social media, on Twitter and Facebook. So that's was what I wanted to tell you. And I'm just stopping my screen. And now I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Jacob D. Wickham, who is our main trainer, and he will tell you also now how to write a successful PhD proposal, which can help you then also to apply for the MSc PhD programs. Jacob, I hand over the mic to you and make you a presenter at the same time.
Thank you. All right, I think I can show my screen, so let me know if you can see my slides.
Can
everybody see these slides?
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, I'm gonna just turn off my camera because the bandwidth in China. I'm based in Beijing, and it's Friday night. So if I have the video off, this will go much smoother. So my name is Jacob Wickham, and I am a professor in the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and I'm also an editor of the scientific journal Integrative Zoology, which is a Wiley journal. That's our publishing partner, and I'm part of the International Society of Zoological Sciences. That's the nonprofit organization that administers that journal. So today I'll be talking about developing your PhD proposal and how to do an outline, and then writing the proposal itself. And then there's a second section. This will be only about 10 minutes. And I'll give you some tips on how to write your CV. CVs are different than resumes. They tend to be longer, but you should have multiple versions of your CV, like a short version that is more like a resume, and then the longer academic version. So just to introduce Editage, this company helps researchers get published, helps them write proposals. They've edited more than 1 million papers and helped researchers with developing the tools that they need to do their research successfully and write up their scientific papers successfully. And there's just to go on the next slide. These are the suites of services that are offered by Editage. And there's some anywhere from basic language editing of your manuscript. They can help you with pre-submission issues, and they also offer workshops and webinars, and I've given dozens of webinars for them. And then the website, Editage Insights, this is an online forum for community learning, and I find this very useful even as a researcher. There's a lot of great content on there, and a lot of good articles about what to expect with peer review, how to publish successfully, how to write a successful thesis proposal. And then finally, this R Upskill is a suite of online training courses that will help you polish your writing skills and learn more about publication practices and sharpen your tool chest. Sharpen your skills as a researcher and as a scientific writer. So this is me. I've been in Beijing for more than 10 years. I'm also an adjunct professor at Rutgers University. I've been based in China for the last 10 years. I got an NSF International Research Fellowship from the US, and then I just stayed after my fellowship was over. So this is the journal where I work, Integrative Zoology. We're now ranked on the top 8% in the world in zoology, which is great. When I came on in 2014, we were ranked in the top 25%, but our impact factor keeps going up because much more research is becoming multidisciplinary and integrative. So when I first came to China, I was at the Institute of Chemistry, and now I'm an assistant professor at the Institute of Zoology in the Chinese Academy of Sciences in Beijing. So here's a quick outline of today's webinar. I'll discuss how a thesis is different from a fading out. So I'm just asking everybody if you can hear me.
Yes, Jacob, we can hear you now.
Okay, good. Right, thank you. So it's good practice to write your dissertation proposal. If you have a good idea of what you want to do your research on, oftentimes you have to write like a PhD dissertation proposal or even a postdoctoral proposal even before your fellowship starts. So even before you start applying for these fellowships. So with all those really wonderful offers that you can get through your access, you may want to have a good idea of what you want to do your PhD on and have a good outline of a PhD project. So I'll go over some steps in outlining your proposal and then the actual drafting of your first draft of your proposal. And this is a great skill to learn. Over the course of your career, you will be asked to write research proposals. And the research proposals, may be for like maybe a special program for your PhD dissertation. In the United States, there's dissertation improvement grants that are available for foreigners, even though NSF, most of the funding is for Americans. And in China also offers a lot of really good international opportunities. And to get your foot in the door, you have to write a research proposal, whether it's a PhD proposal or a postdoc proposal, or even as a early career professor, just a research plan, what you want to do. Looking in the bits and pieces of the actual proposal, you'll want to include your methods, preliminary studies. Oftentimes in a PhD program, you'll have done some research for a year or two before you're asked to even write up a dissertation proposal and defend it. So you may have some preliminary studies under your belt that you'll want to include in your proposal. And of course, you'll discuss your expected results. And another good part of your dissertation proposal is having a timeline. Some topics like ecology, you can expect to have your PhD last, 5 or 6 years. But then in chemistry or microbiology, you may have a much quicker PhD period, maybe only 3 or 4 years. So you want to have a good timeline and, of course, a budget but it's your major professor is usually getting grants on behalf of the lab. But once you do start your PhD, you may want to offer to write early. There's some great fellowships that you can get. And then finally, I'll go over how to write your CV, both the short like resume version and the longer academic CV. So how can you go about writing the perfect PhD dissertation proposal? And what does a complete package look like? So theses are much different than scientific papers. Scientific papers have very strict word limits, where your PhD dissertation, this will be one of the few times in your career where you don't have page limits. But you want to have a good idea of what you wanted to do. You want your topic to be well researched. You want to identify what are the knowledge gaps in your research and how you propose to fill those knowledge gaps. You want to have very sound methods, clearly stated hypotheses and procedures, and then expected results as well. So before you start writing, you should know that a thesis is much different than a scientific paper. Writing a thesis is a skill. It's not the same as writing a journal article. You typically don't have page limits. So when you're doing your proposal for your dissertation, or even writing your dissertation itself, it's much more flexible. You can include a lot of extra materials. You can be very exhaustive in your introduction, which may turn into a nice review paper. I know a lot of people try to publish their introductions to their theses as a review article. So where journal articles are very clear and concise and structured, writing is key. The theses are much more flexible. And then there's a link, Edited Insights, if you follow that, there's 9 differences between a thesis and a journal article. And actually, I'll show some. I always in my presentations. So here's the neurobiology of writing, how it's supposed to work and how it actually works. So writing can be a very daunting process, but to get around some of your insecurities or fear or hesitation, it's good to start with a good outline. So the first part of this webinar will be covering outlining. So, and yeah, here's the Edited Insights article. I hope everybody can hear me. So I just said my audio was clicked out again.
Yeah, it's a little bit breaking, but the slides are good, and
okay,
you're back on.
Great, thanks. So remember, your proposal will have no page limits. This is one of the few times in your career where this will happen. So there is no page limit on the thesis. Typically, they can be about 50 pages or contain over 20,000 words. The abstract can be longer. The introduction will be much more detailed. The materials and methods will be very, very extensive. You'll include far more information than you'll include in any of your scientific papers. Both the thesis and journal articles have a clear discussion. You may have more room to elaborate on your discussion in your thesis. And your references, you'll have a really huge list for your thesis because you want to show that it's well researched. But your journal article, you'll have a much more selective list. For example, if you have 10 references on a certain method, you may want to include only the most recent paper in your scientific paper. And usually a thesis will have a lot of appendices as well. So getting started, how to make an outline for your thesis proposal. So the purpose of an outline is to divide the writing of your entire proposal into a number of smaller tasks. So if you have a good idea of what your overall project will be, you may want to divide your project into smaller experiments or proposed experiments. And these can be chapters of your dissertation. And your end goal will be to turn each of these chapters into a publishable paper. So a very good PhD thesis or dissertation, they can usually get about 3 and sometimes 4 papers published out of one dissertation. So a good outline will organize the various topics and arguments in a logical form. And by ordering these topics, you'll identify before writing your actual thesis any gaps that may exist in the knowledge in that field. And you'll want to address those knowledge gaps. So here are some steps to make an outline. So remember, at this stage, you're only constructing an outline. You're not writing yet. What you need to do at this point is just to put down some notes to guide your thinking. You'll want I hope everybody can hear me. I might have broken up again. I apologize.
Yeah, it's just for a split second, but it's going fine, Jacob.
Great. Great. I appreciate you coming back on to let me know so I'm not talking to myself. So each chapter you want to turn into a publishable chapter. That's the ultimate goal of your thesis. Typically, a thesis will have an introduction to introduce the entire topic. And then each of the chapters here, for example, this is a 5-chapter dissertation. These will be planned experiments in your proposal stage. But when you're actually writing your dissertation, these will be future papers. And each of these chapters will actually have a bibliography, a reference section. And typically you'll end your dissertation with a discussion or a synthesis. At the proposal stage, you will not need the discussion and synthesis yet, but just keep that in mind. You will want to wrap up your entire dissertation and make it one coherent document. You don't want to just have like 3 loosely tied papers that you publish from your dissertation, but you want like a very good overall flowing dissertation. But it varies from institute to institute. You may want to have you might want to start thinking at this stage also who will be on your steering committee. Typically when you start your PhD dissertation research, you'll want to have identified a steering committee. Typically, you'll have your thesis proposal happen usually in the first year or at the second year at the latest of your PhD program. But keep in mind, you don't want to be in your PhD forever. So usually during your first year, you'll be actually making a proposal. So here's a little guide on how to structure each publishable thesis chapter. Each of your inner chapters, you'll want to have a separate abstract, introduction, methods, results, and discussion. But at the proposal stage, you'll be focusing more on the introduction, the planned methods, and your expected results. But always have this structure in mind when you're starting to do your outline. So moving on with your outline, you want to define your materials and methods. For biology papers or reports, you may want to briefly state the population in which you're planning to work. Chemistry and biology papers, and probably physics too. You want to describe the sampling method that you're employing, the materials that you're using, and most importantly, the methods that you plan to use to carry out your study. You want to summarize your question and problems. What was known before you started the study? What answers were needed to address the problems? And you want to list the key points pertaining to these. So you can come up with hypotheses and problems for each of your thesis chapters and your overall research. You want to describe your expected findings and results. So here you can write down your expected results for your dissertation. So don't worry about the order or how many that you put down. At this point, you're just doing an outline. So you'll also want to dream big. If you do make the discovery that you're hoping for, you can make brief notes on the implications that may arise from your study. That you have from your study. You also want to focus on novelty. What is novel in your work? Are you using a novel method? Are you using a novel analysis? And what are the limitations and implications of your results? Are there any changes to your practice or your overall research approach that you would recommend, especially if it's novel? When it comes time to publish your papers, novelty is critically important for publishing in so many journals. There's only 2 journals that don't really care about novelty, and that's Nature's Scientific Reports and PLOS ONE. Those journals, if you do research that is just like a confirmation study, something that's been done before, you can publish your work in those journals. But most journals want novelty. So it's important to jot down what the research gaps are and what are the implications. If you do make your big discovery, what implications can result from your research. And as you're finalizing your outline, you want to organize and group related ideas together. Key points can be arranged chronologically by order of importance or some other pattern. You may also want to construct a flow chart of all your experiments, what you hope to accomplish in year 1, in year 2, etc. There's different methods to do this. You can make mental maps or cluster maps or a tree, or you can just make a flow chart on a PowerPoint or just draw it on paper. These will be very helpful when you're actually defending your thesis proposal. And if you do have some expected findings, write them down. You want to provide what your planned analyses are, what are your methods, and what your expected conclusions are in each point. And you'll want to identify references that pertain to each point. And these will be references that you'll be citing not only in your thesis proposal, but in your dissertation and later in your scientific papers. So it's good to start gathering your references. You can start organizing them on EndNote or Mendeley, and that'll make life much easier later when you're writing your papers. And finally, after you have an outline, then you can develop your introduction for your dissertation. So read through your notes that you've made so far in your outline, read them through and see if there's a coherent and cohesive story or a unifying theme that runs through your entire outline. For planned experiments, you also may want to discuss with your PhD supervisor the methods, your proposed methods, before you actually have your thesis committee meeting or a thesis proposal defense. So your introduction outline should start with the main message. Describe what the purpose or objective of your study will be, how you plan to go about your study, and then your expected results, and then implications of your discoveries. So that, in a nutshell, is how to write an outline. And here are some recommendations on how to approach the prepare figures and tables. You might not have too many results before you start doing the research, but you may want to use some tables and figures, because pictures are worth 1,000 words. They really help to communicate what you want to do. So you may want to include timelines, and don't forget to prepare a budget to make sure that what you propose is feasible. Write your proposed methods, then write your expected results. If you've already started doing research, then you can state what your preliminary results have been. And those are called pilot studies. Pilot studies are very useful later on in your career when you're writing a grant proposal. Grant proposals just about always want to have some pilot studies and preliminary results. They want to see that you've actually done some research, or maybe even published in that field before you make a proposal. Discussion and conclusion, those are not needed in the proposal, but keep in mind that you will need these sections when you write your dissertation and your papers. The introduction is probably the most difficult section to write. Then finally, you write an abstract, and then the references. References should be pretty easy because if you're using a program like EndNote or Mendeley, that'll be a huge help for you. Okay, so now here's going into your first draft. I'll explain some steps on how to write your first draft. At this point, after you've constructed an outline, you'll have detailed notes on how to write your thesis proposal. You probably will have a good idea how many chapters your thesis might have. You want to convert your notes and outline into a narrative at this point. Some people recommend that you begin with the introduction. Actually, on the last step of making an outline, you want to develop your introduction. So that's a good place to start, actually. So some people recommend to begin with the introduction and continue in order through each section of the paper or your proposal to ensure flow. Others suggest you start with the easiest section, which are usually the methods or the expected results. Don't worry about discussion and conclusion yet. And usually you leave the title the main thing, most important thing, to begin writing and filling up that blank screen or piece of paper. So the first step, you want to consolidate all your information. Make sure you have everything you need to write efficiently. All your methodologies, your drafts of tables and figures, maybe some flowcharts to depict the order of the experiments that you plan to do. Quick, get it down on paper. Just keep going. Leave gaps if necessary. So try to write quickly and keep the flow going. Use abbreviations and leave space for words that do not come to mind immediately. So at this point, it's important just to get it down on paper. You can always come back and edit it later. Usually I just write very quickly. I don't care about spelling mistakes or other little mistakes. You can always go back and edit those. So the most important thing is to write it down. You'll also want to write in your own voice. Don't copy and paste from Wikipedia or the scientific papers or from websites. You want to write in your own voice. This will actually help you later when you're writing the dissertation and your scientific papers. So expressing yourself in your own way will help you say what you mean more precisely. So it's easier for your reader, who will be your steering committee, if they can hear your voice. I already explained number 5. Don't worry about making mistakes. Write without
Jacob, are you there? Seems there's some audio issue at your end.
Okay, it looks like my connection was lost and I got it back.
Now,
Thanks for
now
your
you're back.
patience. Friday night in China. All right. So keep to the plan of your outline. Use the headings from your outline to focus on what you want to say. The methods usually follow subheadings. As you write your thesis proposal, keep to the headings that you have that you made in your outline and focus on what you want to say. If you find yourself wandering from a certain point, stop and move on to the next topic in the outline. You can always come back to different sections. And write your proposal in parts. Don't try to write the whole thing at once. Instead, treat each section, like your proposed methods or your expected results or your timeline or your budget. Treat each section as a mini essay. Look at your notes, think about the goal of that particular section and what you want to accomplish and say. And then finally, after you write your complete first draft, put it aside. Put it on the back burner. Let it sit for at least a day before you show anybody. The idea of waiting a day or more is to allow you to be another person, to help step outside of the box where you've been sitting in and writing. So it's helpful to think outside the box. It is difficult to proofread and edit your own work, so a day or more between creation and critique will help. This also goes with writing scientific papers. After I write a first draft of a manuscript, I put it aside for a few days. I do something else. I maybe do some experiments or do some editing of other papers and don't work on your paper. And then you can come back to it later. And it's amazing what the mistakes that you can find or the new ideas that you'll have. So don't forget to put it on the back burner for a day or two before you come back to it. And finally, this comes the really busy and hard part is revising your proposal. So revise it and be prepared to do this several times until you feel it is not possible to improve it further. You may want to show your thesis proposal or your dissertation proposal to your advisor at this point, or you may want to share it with a steering committee member. The objective is to look at your work not as its author, but as a respectful but stern critic. They'll want to look at your individual methods. They want to see the introduction is well researched. Are your sample sizes big enough? Are you using the latest methods? Are the statistics tests that you're proposing, are they adequate? And then finally, look at the writing. Does each sentence make sense? If you have longer sentences, can you keep track of the subject at hand? Do your longer paragraphs follow a single idea, or can they be broken into smaller paragraphs? So these are structural parts of the writing that you can critique. So these are some of the questions you should ask yourself. And it's always good to practice clarity and brevity. So here's a wonderful little book called The Elements of Style by Strunk and White. And this is a nice little manual. I got one right next to me. I always have one next to me when I'm writing. And this has some great tips on how to write very concisely and to the point to ensure maximum readability. And to have that, you want to revise your sentences and paragraphs with special attention to clarity, to clearness. Each sentence should be about 15 to 20 words. For a scientific article, when you're writing a paper, paragraphs should be about 150 words in length. That's considered optimal. And avoid using unnecessary words. So this is a great little writing manual, and I'll share some other writing guides with you later in this webinar. And here's a couple best tips. So you want to be consistent. Your thesis proposal, well, your papers will actually have more than one author when you're actually writing your paper, the products of your research. And actually, your PhD supervisor will also be usually pretty helpful in helping you to write your thesis proposal. Because before you have a thesis proposal defense, your PhD supervisor will want to make sure that your proposal is in the best shape possible. So the task of writing will be shared. You're not by yourself. When you're writing scientific papers, often there'll be many authors on the paper. So the writing task will be shared. However, remember the style needs to be consistent throughout. So when you are writing papers, remember the first author must go through the entire document, make sure it has a consistent flow throughout the entire proposal, dissertation proposal. And finally, after you're done, you can turn committee. So perhaps like one of the more difficult sections to write will be your expected results. Methods are pretty easy to write. You can write your proposed methods. You can also use future tense when you're writing your methods. That you will be doing this, you will be doing that. That's perfectly fine to write that in your dissertation proposal. And it's also good to write that in your grant proposals later on, that your proposed methods are written in future tense. Your results section, this will be your expected results, and you can list what you expect your results to be, your expected sample sizes. Your methods will explain your planned sample sizes and statistical tests. So while the introduction represents the research question that you have in mind, the method section will explain the process for collecting data, and the results section will present the actual data that you accumulated through your experiments. So essentially, your results section, by presenting your findings, answers the question, well, what did you find? Just as the introduction answers the question, why are you doing the research? What is the objective of your research? And the method section answers the question, how? How did you go about your research? So thus, the results section plays a critical role in highlighting the significance of study. So what is the expected results section all about? You'll be presenting the data that you plan to collect, and you want to explain it in an objective and systematic and concise manner using text and supplemented by illustrations. So the function of this section is to state the expected findings, interpretations, and inferences drawn from. It should not be a part of this section. So theoretically speaking, this is one of the shortest sections to write. However, it could be one of the most difficult sections. You may also want to include flowcharts in this section, so the readers can, or your thesis committee members can see the flow of your experiments and what you plan to do. You want to make sure you have novelty, that your expected results are novel. Lack of novelty is one of the key reasons for manuscript rejection. So since the results section showcases the significance or novelty of your research, it's critical that you learn how to write this section effectively. So how to write a great expected results section. So basically, here's what you should aim to do. State only the results in a factual manner. Save the explanation and comments for the discussion section. You want to use tables, text, and figures to highlight the key findings in an organized manner. Make sure that the content in tables and figures is not repeated in the text. So make good use of figures and tables. When you're making a proposal, the dissertation proposal, it's often useful to make a timeline of your experiments and use flowcharts. When you get a copy of this PPT, you can watch a video here explains about how to write a results section. If you've already started doing research in your lab, or if you're doing undergraduate research, and you may want to include this in your master's thesis proposal or your dissertation thesis proposal. So include any results from any pilot study in your thesis proposal. This will confirm that your hypotheses have merit. This will demonstrate your expertise and skills. It'll show that the adequate groundwork has been done. It'll show that your project is actually feasible. It's really fun to propose work, but it's easy to go overboard. Your sample sizes might be way too high. It might not be feasible for one person to do all that research. So you want to keep everything realistic. So pilot studies can show that your project is feasible and gives your work credibility. And support. That you can actually do the research in the facilities of your research institute or university. And this will evoke faith in your ability to deliver deliverables of your research. So research design and methods. This is a very key section to your thesis proposal. So this section will be carefully reviewed by scientific experts. Usually a thesis proposal committee will have a steering committee. Some universities will have an outside observer come in to take part in a thesis proposal defense. And also when you're actually defending your dissertation, you'll have experts come in. And they'll be assessing if your methods are adequate to deliver the reliable results. So in your research design and methods, you want to include ethical review, informed consent, if you have human participants, your overall research design, your sampling criteria and selection, recruitment plan, the research sites involved, manner of recruitment for the study, like this is for medical studies. You want to have procedure, like instructions, time, locations, measurements that you plan to do, like tests, questionnaires, technical equipment. You want to list what instruments that you plan to use. You want to convince your thesis committee you have a good data management plan, and for medical research that you maintain confidentiality. Please do include planned sample sizes, statistical analyses that you plan to do. You want to test for homogeneity of variances, test if your data are normal or not. If not, analyze the planned samples that you plan to take. You want to write down what all the variables that you plan to measure and various software for analyses. And finally, the timeline for various steps. And here you can use figures to depict methods and timeline. So, and here's a good example of a timeline of a multiple year project. These are always good figures to have in a thesis proposal or any grant proposal. So, this is just like a simple little table and a figure that's combined into one graphic. Chemistry experiments, they often have a lot of flowcharts to depict the different experiments the researcher is planning to do. So flowcharts are another nice part of every proposal. So when you present your expected results, you want to answer the question, what were your findings? So here you want to state only your expected results, leave out comments and explanations for the discussion. You want to answer the question, well, what are your expected major findings? And you want to answer all the points raised in your methods. You want to have a well-developed hypotheses in your introduction, and you'll be writing very complete methods, and you want to answer all the points that you do raise in your methods. Use tables and charts as appropriate. Don't duplicate data by presenting the same data once as a table and again as a graph, or by repeating it, graphical data in the text. So you just need to mention it once. Again, this is the shortest section to write. So you want to use a table in your proposal when you show numerous values or other data in a small space to compare values and characteristics among groups, or show the presence or absence of specific.
Jacob, we lost you again. Can you hear us?
Characteristics. Usually,
Jacob,
if you have more than
figures are also
repeating
useful
data
when you want to
points.
illustrate.
Sorry, Jacob, we just lost you for 20 seconds. Could you repeat that?
All right. Oh, sure. So the data points, back on the table, if you have 6 or more repeating data points, you'll want to use a table. Or if you have like planned measurements, if you have 6 or more values, you want to use a table. And then using a figure, use a figure when it's more important to show the overall patterns, trends, and relationships in the data, when it's more important than the exact values. You'll also use a figure when you want to show a sequence of events, procedures, geographical features like a map, or physical characteristics, like a picture of a cell structure.
Sorry, Jacob, just to intervene.
I would advise using lots of figures because that actually helps the readers to understand what you're trying to do, and a picture is really worth 1,000 words. So figures should be informative and self-explanatory. They should offer readers a quick overview of your major findings or your planned findings. And they'll help readers better understand your expected results. Figures should have a brief description, like a legend, providing the reader sufficient information to know how the data were produced. You can actually make up data at this point because these are expected results. So you can actually give your audience a good idea of what your expected results will be. Here's a really good figure of immunostating cells. These are some nerve cells that are stained red, and you have like a little
Jacob, I think the
bar
slide
there shows. Is the slide stuck?
We're seeing slide 27.
Okay. Let me.
Are we on this?
Can you see it again? No.
No. Which slide are you?
I'm on the slide with the cell that's stained red.
No. We are stuck at slide 27.
Okay. Okay. Let me I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then share it again. I should be on slide 35.
No, we're stuck on 27. And
Okay, let's see.
One
Sorry about
second. Yeah, no.
I'm going to try to stop sharing my screen and then
would you like me to? Yeah, okay.
Huh.
Let me just change it and try that I become a presenter. Okay.
All right.
Okay, now I stop it and then I make you back a presenter again. So hopefully that should work. Jacob, make presenter. Okay. Can you try now, Jacob?
Okay, I'll share my screen again. Okay, can everybody see the slide number 35?
No. We're not able to see it. So why don't I show yours? I show your screen, huh? And you just tell me that when I should move the slide. Is that would that be an option?
Okay, well, I got control of my screen now. Sure. Okay, go to slide 35.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, make me the presenter. Show my screen. Are you able to see my screen, Jacob?
Yes.
Not yet. Let's see.
I go to 30. So we were here when we lost you at the slides, basically. So we were here. Can you see 27?
Yes.
So not yet. Oops.
So maybe you could just quickly summarize again these slides on preliminary studies, research design and methods, the timeline, and the table, like if that would be possible, because I think many of us could not follow that, that section.
Yes. So yeah, can you go to slide 20?
Preliminary study 28?
28?
Yeah. I'm there.
Okay.
Preliminary studies. So the slide is visible to the audience.
In this slide, I was explaining that many researchers will already have done some of their dissertation work or some methods, and yeah, they've done some lab work. So it's good to include preliminary studies in your thesis proposal. These are like pilot studies that basically will show that confirm that your hypotheses have merit. It'll demonstrate your expertise and skills and show that you've done the adequate groundwork. If these pilot experiments are working, then your bigger thesis proposal will be successful. It'll show that your project is feasible and also demonstrate that you have adequate institutional support. That you can actually do the experiments that you propose to do. And if you have field work, that your institute is actually behind you and is supportive of you and allows you to do the work that you actually proposed. Because proposing is one thing, proposing work is one thing, but doing it and having it be feasible is completely different. So if you go to the next slide, 29, this is a very key part of every thesis proposal, because you'll have other scientific experts attend your thesis proposal and also your dissertation defense later on, and they'll be assessing if your methods are adequate to methodology. You want to provide details of your overall research design, your sampling criteria and selection. If you're doing medical research, you want to have an ethical review, informed consent. You have human participants. Recruitment plan, that's also for medical research. How do you recruit somebody in your study? Or if you're doing animal research or field research, what sites are involved? You want to be very thorough on your procedures, instructions, reimbursement, time, locations, and debriefing. Like if you have human subjects, any follow-ups that you have with human subjects. It's important to include measurements that you plan to take, measures to be used, like tests, questionnaires, what technical equipment, if you're doing chemistry work, what analytical equipment that you need, or like if you're looking at scanning electron microscopy, what are your imaging parameters? You want to have a good data management plan, and if you have human subjects, a plan how to maintain confidentiality. Statistics are very important of any part of any scientific paper. So when you're formulating your proposal, you want to state what your statistical analyses you plan to use, what sample sizes do you plan to make. A lot of your pilot studies, you may have a smaller sample size, and you can actually do something called a power test, and that'll tell you exactly what sample sizes that you'll need, and you'll get a good idea of the variability of your data. So have a good statistics plan. You want to test for homogeneity of variances. You want to have normal data, but if your data fail these tests, be prepared to have non-parametric statistics. It's always good to have a statistician on your committee. So when you're looking at sample sizes and you're planning your sampling, you may want to run your design by a statistician. Most universities have statistical support. They have statistics professors that will be able to help you design your sample sizes. Don't forget, there's lots of great software that's available now. Familiarize yourself with statistical software that you have access to. Some universities use SAS, statistical application systems, or you may want to learn R. Check out what statistics classes are offered at your university and take statistics classes. That's probably the most important part of your thesis, is that your data are statistically sound and they're publishable. And don't forget, timeline is very important for your dissertation. So you want to have a proposed timeline. Like I said, ecology projects may have 6, 7, even 8 years for your dissertation, for your length of, because you have to do field work, and you may only have an opportunity to do field work like once every summer. And then other fields like maybe like physics or chemistry have shorter timelines for your dissertation. So it's useful to use figures to depict your methods. A lot of chemistry papers, chemistry proposals will have really nice flow charts of different experiments. And if you come to the next slide, slide number 30, here's a good example of a timeline for a medical research project. So yeah, you can see it's a nice combination of a table and also of a timeline figure that shows when you plan to do the work and the approximate length of time for each step in the research. They all want to see a nice timeline for your work. Okay, next slide, on slide number 31. Here's some examples how to effectively present your expected results. You want to state what are your most major findings that you expect to make. You can answer all the points raised in the methods. If you have questions in your hypothesis, and then you have detailed methods, you want to list expected results for each of your major methodologies. So use tables and charts as appropriate, and don't duplicate. If you say it in a table, don't repeat it in a figure. And also, if you have it in a graph, don't repeat it in the text. Okay, next slide. When to use a table. You want to use a table when you show numerous values or other data in a small space. Usually, if you have 6 or more repeating units, you'll want to use a table. Use a table to compare values or characteristics among groups, or show the presence or absence of specific characteristics. Next slide, when to use a figure. You want to use a figure when you want to show overall trends and patterns and relationships, when it's more important to show that rather than the exact values. Figures are also very useful in a thesis proposal when you illustrate a sequence of events or experiments or procedures or geographical features or physical characteristics. Next slide, 34. Figures should be informative and self-explanatory. Figures offer readers a quick overview of the major study findings or your expected study findings. And it'll also help give your readers a better understanding of the study results. Each figure should have a brief description or a legend that provides the reader sufficient information to know how the data were produced. So next slide, 35. This is a good example of a nice figure of immunostaining of nerve cells. And you can see that there's green stain and red stain. And it does a really good job of conveying the different parts of the neuron. And the little bar in there shows the size of what you're looking at. And we go next slide in 36. This is an unnecessary figure. This can be listed as text. So 63.4% were women. So how to write a great expected results section. You want to have tables and figures that drive home important points. Make titles and legends as necessary. Make legends short and precise. And the figures and tables should be able to stand alone and never present the same data in tables and figures. So next slide, 38. Here's a checklist. Again, you want to state your most important expected results first. You'll want to start using formats that the scientific journals will be recognizing. When you report your statistics, you want to state your expected sample sizes and your planned statistical tests. For example, the ANOVA uses the F value. The degrees of freedom are like F1, 20. Those are your degrees of freedom. Your statistical value and your p-values. So you want to state exactly what statistics that you plan to use. If your data are normal, and don't forget, if your data fail the test for homogeneity, be prepared to use non-parametric statistics. Yeah, so again, it's very important to show your committee members what your expected sample sizes are and your planned statistical methodology will be. You want to familiarize yourself with the statistical programs that are offered at your university. For example, some universities have
Jacob, we lost you again. Hello, Jacob, can you hear us? Can you hear me?
one of the most important things is that your project is feasible. So this section is key to any dissertation proposal. You may want to have a budget for your laboratory expenses, for your field expenses.
Okay. Sorry, Jacob, we lost you for a second. Which slide are you now?
Okay. I'm on the slide number 39, the budgeting.
Okay, let me go to 39. We lost you at for a few seconds, so I wasn't sure if you had already started. Yeah. Okay. Budget 39.
Okay. So one of the biggest questions in your thesis outline or your thesis proposal defense is if your project is feasible. And one of the things that makes it feasible is the budget. Do you have the adequate resources to do the work? You want to have a good idea of how much your reagents cost. If you're using instruments, you can include a budget for analyzing, like for example, some chemistry samples on a gas chromatograph or a mass spectrometer. Or, you want to have a good idea of what resources you have available at your university and what institutional support is there. Maybe you have a discount for analyzing samples. Most universities have like a chemistry analysis center that'll help. If you have field research, you want to include some budgets for like transportation, also supplies that you'll need in the field. And of course, if you're traveling, you'll have a budget for travel. As you progress through your PhD project or your dissertation program, I'd advise you to try to write up some grants and get some extra support in addition to what your professor can give you. It's a great experience. When I was a graduate student, I applied for some NSF fellowships, and they all had to include a budget. And so I proposed extra experiments, and it actually added a year or two to my PhD, but it was really worth it because I was able to show that I got my own funding for my project, and that added a chapter to my dissertation. So it's always good to have budgets in mind when you're planning your budget. Next slide. This section, be aware this section may take more time than anticipated. And a detailed, a verifiable and justifiable list of expenditures should be included in the budget after adequate research. And make sure you get quotations if you have to buy any field equipment. Make an exhaustive budget if funds exceed the grant allocation, explain that you'll be seeking additional support from different sources. So that's really the final point in the budget. Don't forget the references. For your introduction should be very exhaustive, and then each of your planned thesis chapters should also have references. And keep collecting references. Your PhD project is going to be taking at least 3 or 4 years. So keep collecting references as your research goes on. And if you go on to the next slide, 41, here are some resources that I recommend to help you with your writing. And go next slide, 42. Here are some more resources. So that wraps up the first part of the webinar on writing a really good dissertation proposal, all the way from outlining to drafting your first draft to the nitty-gritty details of your plan methodology, your expected results, and finally timelines and budgets. So this is the second part. If you go to slide number 43, just to give you a brief introduction on CV writing. And I provided a CV writing checklist for everybody, and I do hope you find this useful. If you're an undergraduate or a master's student or early career PhD student, it's very useful to have a CV on hand. You'll need one when you apply for grants. You'll need one when you apply for jobs later on in your career. So the CV should be job or employer specific, and you can follow this checklist to ensure your CV will stand out from the crowd. CVs are typically very long, the academic CVs, but you want to be prepared to have a short one that is more like a resume and then a longer academic CV. For the short CV, don't use more than 2 A4 sides of paper. So in theory, you can just print it on the front and back of one A4 paper. Whereas CVs may be up to 4 pages or even longer, depending on how many publications and activities you have. You want to maintain plenty of white space, avoid long paragraphs. Use bullet points for ease of reading. You want to select a clear, easy to read font. Be consistent with text alignment. So I'll show you some examples of a nice looking CV with good text alignment. If you click on that link, there's a lot of good CV templates on Microsoft Word. If you go on to the next slide, 44, you want to have multiple copies of your CV. It's good to have 2 main copies. One is a 2-page biographical sketch, and even the most well-known professors, they'll be asked to give a brief 2-page biographical sketch. If they're applying for a grant or if they're trying to publish or submit a proposal for an annual review paper. And then you'll have a longer academic resume, which is like more exhaustive. You probably don't want to have a picture in your CV, or include your children's names or your marital status. Those things are secondary. What you will want to focus on, for example, the 2-page biographical sketch. You want to have your contact information for sure, what your current rank is. You'll want to list your education, starting with your undergraduate degree and the master's, PhD, and list postdocs. And be sure to list your awards or honors that you have, and then a list of all your positions. For the shorter biographical sketches, you may want to list no more than 10 publications, or even just 5 publications. So you want to keep those very short if you are asked to make a biographical sketch. So next slide, please. Slide 45. This is what not to include on your CV. So again, a picture is not necessary. Salary information, you should leave that out. It's too early to discuss that. It might be a question later on in like a final stages of your interview when you actually get offered a contract. It might not even be discussed when you do have a job interview. Never state why you left a previous position, and only list references if it's an absolute requirement. Often this section is written, references, and then have to write a letter of recommendation for you. Others will be just contacted former employers or former master's or PhD supervisors may only be contacted after your prospective employer asks for their contact information. So going back to the checklist, next slide, please, 46. You want to have a good style and structure to your resume, to your CV. So depending on the job you're applying for, the style can be formal or slightly less so. However, the wording on your resume or CV should be 100% professional. You want to use high impact, positive words to make for compelling reading. A good CV should follow logical order. You should have your contact details, a summary statement that's more of like an objective statement. And you want to start your experience with the most recent job, education and training. So you want to have your most recent job experiences, and then you'll go back further and further in time. Don't forget to include your contact details. In the previous slide, I immediately had my first paragraph had my contact details. Cover letter, this will be a separate document. This is usually included with any job application. You want to do a great job on your cover letter. State why you should be selected for this particular role and what strengths that you bring to the position, and make sure it's a clear match of your skills to the role you applied for. So next slide, 47. When you list your education and training, if you're a student, place this section actually before your employment history. I did that in my sample CV that I showed you. List your education and training in reverse chronological order. So I think I made a mistake. I think I did my oldest first. So you want to do your most recent education first. So list your PhD first, then your master's, then your bachelor's. You want to detail all formal education that's list your experience. You'll also want to list this employment history in reverse chronological order. So that means start with the most recent. Highlight key responsibilities and accomplishments. These can be bullet points. And back up your achievements with figures, percentages, and data wherever possible. And that's more resume writing. Next slide, slide 48. These are academic subsections. So if you're applying for graduate school or a PhD program or a postdoc program or even a job, be prepared to have a much longer CV. And these are all critical sections of your CV. So you want to include awards and honors. These can be fellowships. You can include all the grants that you've been successful in applying. You may even want to include pending grants, just to show that you're active applying for grants. You want to list your publications. You can even list your submitted manuscripts or manuscripts in prep, to show that you have papers planned. You can also list reviewing for scientific journals. I have a slide that shows an example of that. Be sure to include presentations, like invited presentations, posters, lectures, or conferences that you attended, or exhibitions that you attended. If you have teaching experience, you can have a teaching section that is separate. You can list what courses you taught. You may even want to tell your prospective employers that you have teaching evaluations available upon request. And finally, outreach. Outreach is usually an important component of academic jobs. Usually it's research, and then teaching, and then outreach are like the three main sections. So if you come to next slide, 49. Here's my reviewing experience. So again, this is one section of the academic resume that you want to highlight and make it easy to read. I just made an N for the number of journals I reviewed for, and then I lined up the text so it's easy to read. Before, I just had this in one big paragraph, and it was not did not look very pretty. So I just revised it recently. So next section. Now to put your finishing touches on your CV, you may want to list some keywords on your CV. A lot of employers will use computerized systems to sift through hundreds of CVs during the initial application stage. So you may want to include keywords, and including these will help ensure that your CV will pass these tracking systems, which are done by computer, and move on to the next stage. There's a link there on, there's a handout that we'll send to everybody on this checklist. And you can learn how to include keywords by clicking that link. And finally, you want to proofread your CV by doing a very careful grammar and spelling check. Often you want to have several people read over your CV to be 100% sure that everything is correct. And if you come to the last slide, 51, I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm sorry for the difficulties and with the connection. And thank EurAccess for hosting me and for helping to give this webinar. So if you can type your questions in the panel, feel free to type your questions here, and I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for this very excellent presentation. There were, of course, we had some technical problems, but overall, I think we well understood what you were explaining, and I think it worked very well in the end. And we also have some questions which came in during the sorry, I'm just here. Yeah. So during your presentation, and let's start with the Q&A session. So the one question is how detailed does a PhD proposal need to be when applying for a program? It is often unclear to pinpoint on the exact topic one wants to work on a broader theme is known, and a broader theme is known. So how detailed should the PhD proposal be in your experience?
Yeah, so I think a lot of these programs can be like program specific or even country specific. Often you don't even know what's expected until you actually start writing it, and it's very useful to follow all the guidelines of the proposal guide. Usually there's like something called an RFP, or a request for proposals, and they'll tell you how specific that you actually need to be. They may be specific on word limits, especially if you're applying for competitive funding. In general, most universities don't have a word limit, but with how everything is becoming more internationalized, there are a lot of PhD fellowship opportunities available, especially for international fellowships, and they have very specific guidelines for the proposals. Like for example, like the timelines are a very critical component. A work plan, if you actually do get the funds, they'll actually want you to submit an additional work plan after you find out that you got funding for your research.
Okay, another question was, what's the difference between a dissertation and a thesis? Like you were mentioning
Looking
those
at other
terms.
questions, everyone should be able to get a copy of the presentation. And also the CV writing guide. You should also get a copy of that as well. I apologize if you hear all these explosions. Tonight is the last night of the Chinese New Year, and there's fireworks going off like all over the place outside my apartment.
So Jacob, what's the difference between a dissertation and thesis? You've been using those terms. Are they interchangeable? Was one of the questions.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, you're not able to hear me?
Yeah, I didn't hear you at all. I can hear you now.
Can you? So what's the difference between dissertation and thesis? You've been using those terms. Are they interchangeable or is there a difference?
Basically, a thesis proposal can also referred to as a dissertation proposal. But master's theses will be a thesis, but a dissertation proposal can be a thesis or a dissertation proposal. So it's, I just use it because it's more inclusive.
Yep, yeah. Could you talk a bit more about the cover letter, Jacob? Like what would you suggest to add and what not to add in a cover letter?
So a cover letter should really just summarize what the strengths of your proposal are. It could be a match with your thesis proposal, like supervisor. Like a match of expertise. Like when I was writing my postdoctoral, I actually had to write a dissertation, like a postdoctoral proposal, and it was like doing another PhD dissertation. The cover letter basically described the strengths of not only that I felt I brought into the research program, but also the strengths of my host lab that I was applying for. So when you're looking at a different PhD, familiarize yourself with the resources that are in the lab and see if your skill set either matches your potential host lab, or it might be complementary to your host lab. You might bring in new skills. So you want to basically convince the readers of your both the cover letter and your proposal of what strengths that you have, what is the novelty of the work that you're trying to propose, and what are the potential implications of your work. A lot of your cover letter can be taken from your abstract. That you want to state the objective of your research, your expected findings, or what are the research gaps, and how your research can actually change the world. Like what are the implications of your research? So you can sell yourself with a good cover letter.
Yeah. We have another, I think, a good question related to the cover letter is also when we send our email, when we send the application or we send a proposal or we approach a potential professor. I guess you have seen quite a few email students approaching you, like, could you give some tip what should write in the email body? Because if I have a cover letter already, I suppose I shouldn't have the same thing in the email, right? It should be much shorter and more precise to the point.
So yes, the email can be can duplicate a lot of what's in the cover letter. You can make it a little more short and formal, and professors are very busy and don't have a lot of time. So they might actually download your cover letter and your proposal and then wait a few days before reading it. So you want to reiterate the main points, and it's also an opportunity to introduce yourself actually too. So if you do get a good response from a professor, I would recommend trying to email them a lot and keep in good touch with them, because if your proposal is actually successful and you do move to Europe, it is a complicated move to move overseas. So you want to have like a very good dialogue with your potential supervisor.
One is asking if you can include an email template in the slide as well. Another question was how to find potential supervisors. I think there are many ways to it.
I can't hear you. Can you type the question?
Yeah. One second. I'm fine. Can you see the question? One second, I'll try again to send it again directly to you. Seems Jacob has some audio issue again. Are you hearing us, Jacob? I sent you the question.
Maybe in the meantime, Samrat, you could answer about the MSCA fellowship.
Yes, that's a good idea. Thank you, Alida. Yeah, there's one question was if the MSc fellowship to current PhD students also applies who only want to spend 1 or 2 semesters. No, the answer is you have to, if you go for a PhD under the MSc, you have to spend the full time in Europe, which would be between 36 and 48 months.
You're back.
So, yeah, I was just answering a few questions regarding to the EU programs in the meantime. Because so that was regarding the MSCA, and there was another question also. Most of the MSc programs do not require to send in a proposal, but of course it's very good that you show that you know about the project very well, and your current interest or research would fit very much into the existing project. Yeah. What other question? Jacob, are you still with us? We have 2-3 minutes left.
I hear you.
Okay. Yeah.
That's great. It's wonderful to have the audio back.
Yeah. How to find a potential supervisor? Like, do you have any tips to how to look for supervisors? Could you share something on that?
So, yeah, it's very competitive to find a supervisor. The first thing I would do is just to look on the university web pages and familiarize yourself with the research that they do. Read their papers. You should also attend the conferences. When you show your research off at a conference, that might be a wonderful opportunity to meet a potential professor. I know it's really tough nowadays with the COVID pandemic. There's not a lot of in-person conferences, but when you do make that initial reach out, you should introduce yourself. Maybe be prepared to share a CV, and it'll help a lot if you have some publications that that may overlap with the potential supervisor. I've had students, potential students, reach me on ResearchGate. There's like a chat function there, and also sometimes I just get dropped emails from people in India, Pakistan, in the U.S. Mostly, and they'll just introduce themselves and their background and a CV, and it's good to get dialogue going on. You can ask about whether they have are accepting students, number one, and number two, if there's any funding available. A lot of professors would be very happy to host you if you can bring your own funding. So you can mention that you're willing to apply for funding, and usually you can meet with some agreement. If they look at your CV and they think you're a good match for the lab, then you can go and take further steps. So be prepared to have like a little research presentation, because I think a lot of people now are interviewing online. So you can have a Skype call with the professor, and he might invite some postdocs and graduate students into his office, and you can give a short 30-minute research presentation and to introduce yourself. That's a great way of they're serious about looking at you as a prospective PhD student or a postdoc. That's a great way to break the ice and introduce yourself.
I think we are reaching the end of the webinar. Jacob, thank you so much. You also gave a good keyword, which was, again, I can't hear you, but let me just conclude this webinar. Jacob gave a very important keyword, is also conferencing and networking. And we are having our next webinar under the career development series on how to make a good conference paper presentation and how to do networking at conferences. Also, this is also a very important part for early career researchers, is to present your research, your work at conferences. So colleague of Jacob will take that training in 2 weeks from now. We will announce it next week, exactly the dates and the timings. And I think this will be also very interesting, informative for our young researchers.
I hear you.
Thank you so. Yeah, I was just mentioning that your colleague will give a talk on how to do a good conference paper presentation in a couple of weeks from now. So that will be also a good way to continue building your research career with your access and with our partner Cactus Communications. So thank you, Jacob, for joining in and for your presentation and your time. And thank you so much to all the attendees. Wishing you a nice weekend. We will share the recordings and the presentation with you at the beginning of next week. If your questions have not been answered, please do send us your questions. We will try our best to address them. Sorry again for the slight technical delay from our side, but I think overall you got a very good picture on how to write a good and successful PhD proposals. Thank you so much. Have a nice weekend. Bye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Jacob. You too. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.